They told me I didn't own the lake. They told me I was trespassing on my own land. And when I didn't fold, they sent security to drag me off my dock like I was a criminal. But what they didn't know, I'd served 12 years in the Navy, and I know how to fight on water and on land, especially when I'm legally right. This is the story of how a self-proclaimed HOA Karen tried to steal my lake, and how I turned the tide with one phone call. Watch until the end. And if you've ever had to deal with a power-hungry HOA, drop a comment. Let's see how many of us are out here. I bought the lakefront property to be left alone. After 2 decades of military service and a bitter divorce, I wasn't looking for neighbors or block parties. I wanted stillness, solitude, a piece of water that belonged to me and nobody else. The land was tucked at the edge of Pine Hollow, a quiet Georgia development with rows of suburban houses on one side and wilderness on the other. My place was a holdover from before the neighborhood was built. 6 acres, a 1-story brick house, and half the shoreline of a small private lake. When I signed the paperwork, the county clerk even pointed at the parcel map and said, "See that blue part? You own that too, up to 30 feet out." It was quiet, it was legal, it was perfect. The first 2 weeks were bliss. I rebuilt the old wooden dock, cleared brush from the shoreline, even installed a small bench near the water to drink coffee at sunrise. I bought a used John boat off Craigslist and spent mornings fishing in silence, watching dragonflies hover like helicopters above the reeds. No one bothered me. No one even waved, which was exactly what I wanted. Until the woman in the red golf cart showed up. It was a Saturday. I'd just returned from the hardware store and was unloading bags of river rock to line the edge of the shore. She pulled right up to the edge of my driveway, parked halfway on my grass, and honked twice. Not the friendly kind of honk, the commanding kind. I walked up, wiping sweat off my forehead, and she didn't even introduce herself. "Sir," she said, pulling out a clipboard, "you're not allowed to modify common property without HOA approval." I blinked. "I'm sorry. Who are you?" She squinted like I just insulted her. "Marcia Callahan, president of the Pine Hollow Homeowners Association." I glanced at the clipboard, where a printout of the lake map was marked with angry red lines. "Ma'am, this land isn't part of Pine Hollow. I bought it from the previous owner directly. It's not part of your HOA." She gave a tight smile. "The lake is common. All residents have equal access." "No," I said slowly. "This shoreline, and half that water, is on my deed. I own it." "You can't own water," she snapped. "That lake belongs to the community." I tried reasoning with her, explained how the land predated the subdivision, how my survey showed exclusive access rights. But Marcia wasn't listening. She was already writing something on her clipboard. "That bench will need to be removed, so will the dock. And that boat is unauthorized." "Unauthorized by who?" I asked, laughing. "You?" Marcia didn't answer. She turned the golf cart around, tires kicking up dust, and called over her shoulder, "You'll be hearing from us." She wasn't bluffing. On Monday morning, I found an envelope taped to my front door. "Notice of violation," it said in bold red font. Inside was a list of alleged infractions: illegal dock construction, unauthorized shoreline alteration, and denial of access to community water resource. The letter was signed by Marcia, with a threat of daily fines and further enforcement actions. I laughed at first. Then I called the HOA office. "This must be a mistake," I told the receptionist. "I don't belong to Pine Hollow. I'm on a separate lot, completely outside the HOA boundaries." The woman on the other end hesitated. "That's not what our map says." "Your map is wrong." She promised to escalate the issue. Days passed. More letters came. On Wednesday, a man with a badge and a clipboard walked right down my property to the dock and started taking pictures. I came out and confronted him. "Are you with the county?" "No, sir, Pine Hollow HOA enforcement." "You're trespassing," he smirked. "This is common land. I'm well within my rights." I reached for my phone. He walked off without another word. That night, I pulled out every document I had: my deed, the parcel map, the legal description of property lines. I highlighted the boundary where my lot intersected the lake, Underline the phrase, with riparian rights to shoreline and water body, extending 30 feet from average high water mark. I made copies, put them in a binder, because I had a feeling I'd need them. The next Saturday, I invited my brother over. We grilled steaks, drank cold beer, and fished off the dock like we used to when we were kids. It was the first time I'd smiled in days. That is, until two men in uniforms walked down the hill. Private security. They wore black polos with Pine Hollow HOA compliance, stitched in gold. One of them held a folder. The other rested his hand near his belt like he was waiting for an excuse. "Sir," the first one said, "you're in violation of HOA codes. You'll need to leave the dock area immediately." "This is my dock," I said. "You're trespassing." The second one stepped forward. "We've been authorized to enforce access. If you refuse to comply, we'll contact county law enforcement." I smiled. "Go ahead. Call them." They did, and that's when everything changed. The deputy who arrived didn't look like he was in the mood for HOA politics. He stepped out of his cruiser slow, one hand on his belt, the other holding a notepad. Name tag said Deputy Collins, early 50s, wiry build, salt and pepper mustache that twitched every time the security guys opened their mouths. "You the property owner?" he asked me. "I am, Jake Milner. Got my deed and survey right here." I handed him the binder. One of the security guards stepped in. "Deputy, this man is interfering with community access to the lake. He's also built unapproved structures." Collins didn't answer. He flipped open the binder and scanned the highlighted documents. Took his time. Then he looked up at me. "This your signature on the deed?" "Yes, sir." "Surveys from Haskell County Land Office?" "Certified 6 months ago." He nodded slowly, then turned to the two HOA men. "And what authority do you have to enforce anything on this property?" They hesitated. "We were instructed by the HOA president." "Is this lot under HOA jurisdiction?" "Well, the lake is considered," Collins cut them off. "Is this lot inside the HOA?" "No," I said before they could weasel. "This is parcel 14B-07, independent from Pine Hollow. Was never annexed. The lake touches the neighborhood, but this section's privately held." Collins raised an eyebrow. "That true?" They didn't answer. "Then I suggest you two leave this man's property now before I cite you for trespassing." They left in silence. Collins stayed a moment, scribbling something into his notepad. "Mr. Milner," he said finally, "seems like you've got your paperwork in order, but I'd keep a camera running just in case. Some folks get creative when they don't get their way." I had cameras already, but that night I added 2 more, both with night vision and cloud backups. I wasn't taking chances, because I knew Marcia wouldn't stop. Sure enough, Monday morning brought another letter. This time it wasn't a violation. It was a cease and desist order typed up on Pine Hollow HOA letterhead. Claimed I was interfering with neighborhood enjoyment of shared resources and threatened civil litigation if I didn't remove all obstructions and provide reasonable access to the lake. She'd escalated. I made copies and took everything to a local real estate attorney named Nina Patel. She wore sharp suits, spoke in short sentences, and didn't blink much. After 15 minutes with the documents, she looked up. "She has no legal ground, not even a foundation. Your property's clean. The lake access clause she's referring to, that only applies to the East Bank, inside Pine Hollow, not your shoreline. So what do I do?" Nina leaned back. "Let her sue. We'll counter with a motion to dismiss, and if they're dumb enough to proceed, we'll bury them in discovery. But in the meantime, document everything. Every knock, every note, every visitor. Start a log." I did. For the next 2 weeks, the harassment shifted tactics. No more security guards. Instead, neighbors. Strangers walking dogs accidentally, letting them poop near my dock. Teenagers leaving trash by the shoreline. Paddle boats from the HOA side drifting over and accidentally tying off to my dock like it was public. One morning I came out to find "private equals selfish" spray painted on the side of my boathouse in neon orange. Marcia denied everything. When I brought it up at the public HOA meeting, yes, I showed up. She smiled like I was a confused child. We encourage peaceful coexistence with our neighbors, she said sweetly into the mic. But some people forget they're part of a community. Murmurs of agreement. A few smirks. I recognized two of the faces from my shoreline trash patrol. They were coordinated, not just trying to win, trying to break me. But I'd been through worse. What they didn't realize was that the more they pushed, the calmer I got. The Navy taught me that. When things get loud, you get quiet. When people posture, you plan. That's when I found it. Buried in the county records was a document from 1989, an easement denial from the previous owner of my land. It explicitly rejected any future annexation into Pine Hollow and affirmed private ownership of both shoreline and adjacent water. And it had been signed by the original Pine Hollow developers. Even better, it had never been revoked. It was legal bedrock, stronger than any HOA bylaw or vague community standard. Nina lit up when she saw it. This isn't just protection, she said, flipping the page. This is a shield. If she tries anything else, we'll file an injunction. And if she slanders your ownership again, we sue for defamation. But before we could act, she acted again. On a quiet Thursday morning, I woke to the sound of engines. 4 trucks, one with a flatbed, one marked Pine Hollow Maintenance, 2 labeled Lake Safety and Compliance. And behind them, Marcia, standing tall in a cream blazer and sunglasses like she was running for mayor. They'd brought backup, and this time, they were headed straight for my dock. They didn't knock. They didn't ask. They didn't even pause. The maintenance crew walked straight past the no trespassing sign I'd posted at the gate. One man unspooled yellow caution tape, while another carried bolt cutters toward the dock's chain. I stepped outside fast, still barefoot, phone in hand already recording. "Step away from the dock," I said loudly. Marcia turned at the sound of my voice, her expression smug. "We're performing an emergency safety assessment. The structure is in violation." "No, it isn't. The HOA has jurisdiction over any lakeside infrastructure that could impact community safety." "You don't," I said. "This is private property." She ignored me. "Remove the obstruction," she said to one of the men. I moved fast, placing myself between the dock and the workers. "Touch that chain, and I swear to God, you'll regret it." The younger man hesitated, eyes flicking to Marcia. She waved her hand. "He's bluffing. We've got the authority." That's when I held up the document. This is a legal easement denial filed in 1989. It explicitly excludes this parcel from your jurisdiction. You are trespassing. And this, I pointed at the crew, this is attempted property damage. Marcia's smile faltered for half a second, just long enough for me to press call on my screen. "Deputy Collins, it's Milner again," I said as soon as he picked up. "Need you down at my dock. Now HOA's back, this time with bolt cutters." He didn't even ask questions. "We're en route." The maintenance guys started backing off, unsure, but Marcia held her ground. "This won't end how you think it will," she said quietly, close enough now that only I could hear her. "We've been here longer. We know how things work around here." I didn't answer, just held the phone steady. 20 minutes later, the cruisers pulled up, 2 this time. Deputy Collins stepped out, and with him, another deputy I hadn't seen before. Female, no nonsense, already snapping on gloves as they approached. "Everyone stay where you are," Collins ordered. Marcia tried to speak. "Deputy, this man," he held up a hand. "Ma'am, I need to see written authorization for your actions here today." She hesitated. "The HOA board approved it. I need to see the documentation." "I didn't bring it with me." He turned to me. "Mr. Milner?" I handed him the easement file and the survey documents. Collins took his time again, read every word, handed a copy to his partner, who stepped aside and began making calls. While they worked, Marcia paced, still trying to project control, but I could see it slipping. Her maintenance crew stood off to the side now, clearly realizing they'd walked into something hot. Then the second deputy returned. "No record of emergency authorization filed with the county. No permits, no inspection request, nothing to justify presence here." Collins nodded. That's what I thought. He stepped closer to Marcia. Ma'am, if you proceed with any further action on this man's property, you will be charged with criminal trespass and attempted destruction of private property. Do you understand? Marcia's face flushed. She opened her mouth, closed it, then finally said, Fine, but we'll resolve this another way. She marched back to her golf cart, and just before she turned the ignition, she hissed, This isn't over. She was right. It wasn't. That night, I got an anonymous note taped to my door. No envelope, just thick black Sharpie on a torn piece of notebook paper. You've made a lot of enemies. Sell while you still can. I didn't flinch, just logged the note, took photos, filed a police report, and emailed everything to Nina. She replied in 10 minutes. Let's go on offense. The next morning, we filed a formal complaint with the County Property Board and sent a cease and desist letter to the Pine Hollow HOA citing harassment, trespass, and attempted property interference. Nina also filed an open records request for all HOA documentation regarding enforcement actions near Parcel 14 B-07. What came back was gold. Minutes from a board meeting 2 months prior, with Marcia on record saying, we need to make sure no one thinks they can just buy land and act like the rules don't apply. If we push hard enough, most will cave or move. I forwarded that to Deputy Collins. The next day, I noticed patrol cruisers circling my street more frequently, just passing by. But the message was clear. Then came the kicker. Marcia filed a civil suit, claimed emotional distress, claimed I'd made threats, claimed the dock violated historical access paths, and that I was depriving the neighborhood of a community resource. Nina smirked when she saw the paperwork. Good, she said. Let her swing. Because now we had standing to countersue. The case would take months to process, but it meant something bigger, discovery, which meant we could subpoena HOA records, compel testimony, dig into every shady enforcement pattern. I wasn't just defending my land now. I was going after the rot at the root of it all. The lawsuit opened floodgates Marcia never saw coming. Within a week, Nina filed our counterclaim. Not just a defense, a full-scale offensive, harassment, defamation, malicious interference with property rights, trespass, abuse of position within a quasi-governmental body. We backed every accusation with time-stamped footage, witness statements, and HOA meeting transcripts. Nina had built a warhead, and we just launched it. That's when things stopped being just legal. They turned physical. It started with noise. Middle of the night, loud banging near the dock. I checked the cameras and caught 2 silhouettes in hoodies throwing rocks at my boat. One tried to loosen a mooring line. I turned on the floodlights and blasted an air horn. They scattered, but not before one slipped on the rocks and limped off. The next day, my mailbox was bent sideways. Not by a car, by force. You could see the boot prints in the mud. I filed police reports. Again, Collins came out, jaw tighter than usual. They're escalating, he said. You should consider a trail cam system on the perimeter. Hidden. I nodded. That afternoon, Michael showed up. We hadn't spoken much since I moved in. He lived 2 streets over, retired Army. Quiet type. He parked his truck, stepped out, and handed me a heavy black box. 8 motion-triggered cams. Infrared, cloud-linked. No one's going to sneak up on you now. I stared. Why are you helping me? He shrugged. I've lived here 12 years. Seen this kind of thing before. Marcia's had power too long. People are scared to push back. You're not. Figured you could use a little backup. He helped me install them that same evening. Watch your 6, he said before leaving. And thank God I did, because what came next wasn't just aggression. It was tactical. 3 nights later, someone cut my power line. Straight slice, clean through the conduit just outside the main box. It triggered the alarms, backup battery kicked in, sent alerts to my phone and the monitoring company. I was back online within 2 hours. But it was a message. Nina didn't hesitate. She sent a motion to the court requesting emergency injunctive relief, immediate protection orders, prohibition against any HOA-initiated contact or entry, and preservation of all HOA records under threat of spoliation sanctions. The judge approved it in 24 hours. We also requested an independent audit of HOA actions for the past 5 years. That's when the whispering started. Neighbors began stopping by, quietly, nervously. Hey, just wanted you to know, Marcia tried the same thing with our boat ramp access 2 years ago. We got fined for a fence she said was an inch too high. Turns out it wasn't even measured right. Marcia's son owns a landscaping company. Guess who gets all the HOA contracts? The pattern was emerging. Power abuse, selective enforcement, crony contracting. Nina compiled every account into an affidavit packet, over 40 pages by the end of the week. We submitted it to the court and shared it, quietly, with a local reporter Nina trusted. The story ran under the headline, Lake War in Pine Hollow, how one homeowner took on a rogue HOA president. It blew up. By the next day, my inbox was full. Emails from strangers across the country, retired judges, real estate attorneys, veterans, people who'd faced their own HOAs and lost, and people who won. I wasn't alone. Marcia, on the other hand, was starting to crack. The next HOA meeting was supposed to be routine. It wasn't. I attended, armed with a GoPro and a stack of evidence binders. Marcia walked in late, flanked by two younger men in suits who clearly weren't neighbors, her lawyers. She tried to shut the meeting down before public comment, but that only made people angrier. One woman stood up. Why was I fined for a bird bath when your house has 3 unpermitted light posts? Another. You said I couldn't park my camper for more than 12 hours, but your cousin parks his trailer for days and no one says a word. Then Michael, calm, clear, standing in the back like a witness in a military tribunal. I've got emails, Marcia, from 2017, where you told board members to nudge certain residents until they moved. That got the room buzzing. I waited. Then I stood and projected my voice across the hall. I have a certified deed, a county map, easement denials, and a court-approved restraining order. Yet this HOA president tried to remove me from my own dock, with bolt cutters and a fake safety team. Silence. I don't want power. I don't want attention. I just want peace. But this, I held up one of the violation letters, is harassment. And I'm not the only one. That's when the first vote of no confidence was called, and that's when Marcia walked out. She didn't quit, not yet, but she was rattled. The last straw came the following week, when I caught her on camera, standing at the edge of my lawn, talking into her phone. The lake's worth too much to let him keep it. We'll force a reassessment. There's gotta be something in his title history we can use. The audio was clean, the timestamp perfect. I sent it straight to Nina. And 2 days later, we filed the final motion, a formal complaint to the state HOA regulatory board. Not just about Marcia, about Pine Hollow as a whole. The dock was quiet that night, but my phone wasn't, because word was spreading, and Marcia Callahan was finally losing her grip. They came at dawn, not in suits or golf carts this time, in county vehicles with clipboards and laminated badges. 2 men and a woman. Property Standards Division. They didn't knock. I watched from the porch as they walked the edge of my lawn, pointed at the boathouse, took photos of my roofline. One of them measured the dock from shore with a laser tool. Marcia stood at the edge of the street in a powder blue pantsuit, arms folded. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her smirk said everything. The inspectors didn't announce themselves until I walked over and asked directly. Routine inspection, the taller man said, showing his ID. Requested by your homeowners association. I'm not part of one. He hesitated. This is parcel 14B-07. Independent. Never annexed. No HOA jurisdiction. He turned to the woman beside him, who frowned and tapped her tablet. He's right. Boundary line stops at 14B-06. The pause was long, tense. Then the lead inspector sighed. This request shouldn't have been processed. Sorry to bother you, sir. He turned to leave. The woman followed, but the third man lingered, the one with the measuring laser. He stepped closer. Off the record, he said quietly. This isn't the first complaint she's filed against non-members. She's got a reputation downtown. I nodded. Working on fixing that. He gave a small smile. Keep going. They left. Marcia didn't. She stood alone for a long time, eyes locked on my dock, face blank. Then she got into her car and drove away. That same afternoon, Deputy Collins called. "You'll want to come down to the station," he said. "We've got something." I arrived 15 minutes later. He met me in the hallway holding a manila folder. This came from a routine subpoena, financials tied to Pine Hollow's discretionary funds. He opened it. Inside invoices, dozens. Landscaping, consulting fees, security costs, all paid to shell companies. One of them traced back to Marcia's maiden name, another to a P.O. box in a neighboring county, matching the billing address on the HOA's so-called compliance division. "This is fraud," Collins said simply. "And that's not all." He laid down a phone record. Calls between Marcia and a former board member, timed precisely around the day my power line was cut. Text messages recovered from a phone dump. "You think you're special? We've gotten rid of bigger problems. Keep the pressure on him. He'll sell. I want that lake clean before the summer HOA meeting." I sat in silence, adrenaline low and cold. "We're opening a formal investigation," Collins said. "It won't be quick, but it will be thorough. And it starts today." Back home, I found Michael waiting on the porch. "She tried to have you evicted," he said. "Had a draft motion circulated to declare your property a safety hazard. But she can't. She knows. That's why she's desperate. You've got her boxed in." I exhaled. Michael handed me an envelope. Inside, a printed flyer. Special HOA Assembly. Agenda. Emergency Amendment to Community Safety Charter. Proposed action. Mandatory access compliance for lakeside properties. "She's still going to try," he said. "She's calling every old favor she's ever banked." That night, I made my choice. I wasn't just going to show up. I was going to finish this. I spent the weekend assembling everything. All the evidence. Every time-stamped photo, every audio clip, every property line map, surveillance screenshot, phone log, and legal document. Nina helped. So did Michael. So did half a dozen neighbors who were ready to be done with the fear. Monday night arrived. The room was packed. Marcia stood at the podium, dressed like she was giving a eulogy for democracy. Robert, her longtime second-in-command, sat beside her looking like a man on a sinking ship. She started with charm. "Good evening, everyone. As you know, this meeting is to discuss new safety measures for our beautiful lake and the responsibilities of adjacent residents." I raised my hand. She ignored me. "To ensure that community access remains a priority and that all members adhere to evolving standards." I walked to the center aisle, held up my folder. "Point of order." Murmurs. Marcia scowled. "This isn't a courtroom, Mr. Milner." "No," I said, "but it's still America. And this isn't your lake." Gasps. A few quiet laughs. I laid out the documents on the front table. Loud, deliberate. "These are records from the county. This is my deed. This is my survey. These are sworn affidavits from neighbors. And this," I held up a USB drive, "is a full audit trail of fraudulent payments, intimidation tactics, and illegal coordination of fake inspections." I plugged it into the room's projector. The screen lit up. First slide, Marcia's voice from my camera audio. "We'll force a reassessment. There's got to be something in his title history we can use." Next, bank transactions, matched to Shell LLCs tied to her family. Then, the text messages. The room went silent. Finally, Nina stepped forward. "A formal investigation has been opened by the Haskell County Sheriff's Office. Anyone with concerns about past HOA actions should contact our office immediately." People stood. Voices rose. Some shouted. Some cried. Amanda, the newest board member who'd long stayed quiet, took the microphone. "I motion to suspend all votes tonight, and I further motion to open a recall proceeding against President Marcia Callahan, effective immediately." The vote wasn't even close. She was out. She didn't speak as she left. Not a word. Just gathered her papers with trembling hands and walked out of the room, the heels of her expensive shoes clicking faster with each step. No one clapped. No one followed. Even Robert stayed seated, staring at his folded hands like they'd betrayed him. Amanda took over as interim president that same night. No ceremony, just a soft but firm voice over the mic. Let's rebuild. I walked home slow, not triumphant, just steady. There was no music swelling in the background, no cheering crowd, just pine needles under my boots and the sound of frogs singing down by the lake. It rained later that night. Hard. I stood at the dock in a poncho, watching the water ripple, my boat bobbing gently against the pilings. The air smelled clean, alive, like the fight was washing off the world. 2 days later, the new board met to reverse the fines. Every bogus violation, every fabricated infraction against my property, cleared. A formal apology was mailed, signed by Amanda and notarized. That same week, the local paper ran a follow-up. Pine Hollow cleans house. Former HOA president under investigation for fraud, harassment. Marcia wasn't mentioned by name, but everyone knew. Collins told me off the record that the case was moving forward. Financial misconduct, abuse of authority, misappropriation of funds, maybe worse. By month's end, her Mercedes was gone. Sold. Her house, too, listed at a desperate discount. I watched the sold sign go up from the dock with a cup of coffee in hand and Smokey the cat draped over my shoulder. Yeah, I adopted one. Figured if I was gonna stay, I might as well have company who didn't give orders. And I stayed. Planted a new line of river birch trees along the edge of the water, painted the dock, built a fire pit from the same stone she once called community disruptive. The irony made the flames warmer. Neighbors came by more often now. Not just Michael, but the others, the ones who used to avoid eye contact. One brought banana bread, another asked if I'd help fix a broken gate. Turns out half of them had hated Marcia's reign, but never knew where to start pushing back. "You gave us a backbone," one woman told me. I didn't know what to say, just nodded. A month later, Amanda officially won the board election. With her came new bylaws, shorter, clearer, fair. No more ambiguous clauses, no more hidden agendas. The lake was formally mapped with my property lines explicitly registered and distributed to all residents. It was over. Then one evening, Michael pulled up in his truck, holding a wooden sign with fresh paint. "I figured you earned it," he said, setting it in the grass near the dock. "Private property, respect the water trespassers will be invited for a beer if they knock first." We laughed, hard, for the first time in what felt like a year. That weekend, Amanda hosted a small lakefront gathering. No agenda, no clipboards, just neighbors, stories, cold drinks and burgers on charcoal. I lit the fire pit. Someone brought a speaker. Kids jumped off the dock into the water I almost lost. At sunset, as the sky turned gold and quiet, I found myself standing where this all began. Right at the shoreline, beer in hand, boots in the grass. Marcia was gone. The fear was gone. What remained was something better. Not victory, not revenge, peace. And when someone new moves in, someone who thinks they don't have a voice, or that one person can't stand up to a system that's already against them, I'll point to that dock and say, "You don't need to yell to fight back. Just know your land, know your rights, and never ever let a Karen tell you what you own. Because sometimes the lake fights back, and sometimes it wins."